Okay, so sports, as of today, in these days, in the last couple of years, has just been a form of entertainment to the masses. Unfortunately, a lot of sports fans do not see it that way. They are very much committed and totally devoted to their sports team. And I think it has to do, their devotedness to their teams has to do with their devotedness to their their cities or where they are located, because sports teams represent where you were born or where you grew up and so forth. So for like example, I live in DC. Well, I don't live in DC, I live in Maryland, but DC is right around the corner, and the team that represents DC, Maryland, and Virginia is the Redskins. And even though we do have the Ravens, Baltimore Ravens, they are more a Baltimore team. But in general, since Maryland is not just Baltimore, Maryland is a huge state that composed of other different cities within the state, not just Baltimore. So Redskins, they represent the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So there's a lot of, of course, Redskins supporters around and so forth in this area. And that's basically what sports represent to people, is where they grew up. Or some people just like to associate themselves with a specific team because of how the team plays and their reputation, and they win games and so forth. So they'll associate themselves with a specific team. Or some people will just choose a team and say, oh, okay, I like that team, that's the team I'm going to go with, just because. So whichever way people decide to choose their teams is their personal options. And all that doesn't really matter, but I feel like those who have chosen a team based on where they grew up have a more emotional thing invested in their team, and they're more devoted to their team. And they have to wear jerseys, they put up flyers in their homes, they'll dedicate an entire room in their house to their team, and so forth. I've seen that. I have relatives that have that. So it's a big part of some people's lives. And then there are people who are like, who cares about sports and so forth. I never really was into sports. I mean, I'd watch certain sports again, but I wasn't into, let's say, football, because I never understood it. And my favorite team was the Giants because I was in New York, but I never watched football. But because I was in New York, by default, I would root for the Giants. And even though I never followed sports or cared too much to learn about the players and their names and so forth, or the game. So I started getting into understanding the game when, of course, I married a football sports fan, because my husband, he likes sports. He'll watch all types of sports. So he's a manly man who likes sports. Of course, all his teams are representing his hometown, which is DC, in which he grew up in, where he was born. So of course, teams like the Redskins, the Nationals, the Washington Nationals, and the Wizards. Those are his team that that he supports, and so forth. The only thing I like about Redskins is that I noticed that their players tend to be more real, like genuine people. Majority of their players. So I kind of sympathize with them, because I see, you see potential in your team, and you know that they have more potential and they can reach a little further, and it just never happens for them and so forth. And every season, every year, you see them struggle. Once I started getting accustomed to watching their games, it was very frustrating, and I was just like, I started getting emotionally attached to the Redskins. And I also like the Baltimore Ravens. So, and Giants were still kind of in my system because I was from New York. But I'm not a big fan of sports in any way. I watch whatever team is playing. I don't really care. I will sit and watch football because I started really enjoying the game, watching the game, and so forth. Well, I started noticing something when I watched the Ravens win the last Super Bowl with Ray Lewis. I something about that game kind of, I don't know, it was very, I can't explain it. It was just a feeling. I was happy that, Baltimore Ravens got to the Super Bowl, and I watched the game, and I was like excited, and I was like, oh my goodness, and I was, really happy for Ray Lewis. But there was something in the back of my mind, like, oh no, something, the way it played out, and how he just, coincidentally, he got into the Super Bowl and got his ring and retiring and all of that stuff. And I was like, maybe it's just some big coincidence. It was something about it that just seemed a little fishy to me. And so ever since then, I've been watching the games a little bit closer, and I've been looking back at the games that I've watched, started watching from 2000, probably 2010 or so, and I started noticing little patterns and so forth. And I would listen to, other people break down sports and how it's connected to certain events and what their logos represent. I started like really not really enjoying sports anymore. And I remember one day me and my husband was sitting watching a basketball game, and I said to him, I think this game is rigged. And he looked at me and he was like, oh Lord, it's not rigged. How could they rig it? Why would they rig it? And so forth. And I was like, I don't know. It just looked fake. Like it wasn't real anymore. Like it was not, and my husband, he appreciates sports because he feels, he respects the players and how hard they work and what it took for them to get where they are. And I'm sure, these players, they go through a lot physically, mentally, and so forth whenever they're, put on the field, and they're putting their body in jeopardy of getting hits and injuries and so forth. So I respect the time and energy that, these players put into the sport. But, as I continue to watch the games, it just started like becoming more and more fishier to me. And what really got me to really sit down and just like, okay, let me break this down with the NBA. I started with the NBA with the Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors, that game last year where the Cavs won. I just said to myself, if I believe sports is rigged and it's scripted and so forth, then maybe I should, see if I could prove it to myself and put my theory down and, test my theory. So I did it with the NBA game with the Cleveland Cavaliers and with Golden State Warriors, and sure enough, everything that I suspected would happen in that game, it came to pass. So I was like, whoa. And, my husband, I even was telling my husband, I believe the Cavs is going to win it all. And I just, felt it. I saw it. I saw things surrounding LeBron James, and a lot of stuff was going on with the events and with different things in politics at the time. And I just made some connections, and I felt strongly that it was going to be Cavs in the finals with Golden State, and that the Cavs will be the winners. They don't consider, how much money is invested in sports. Even these commentators that go back and forth on sports networks that's always debating with each other, they're paid to sit there and, basically control your thoughts on a specific team and who you should bet on, who you should support, and so forth. And they're paid to do that. They're paid millions of dollars to sit there and debate on sports networks about specific teams. And what their job is to do is to basically steer the masses perspective of a certain team or a certain player in a specific direction that they want them to steer their direction into, so that they benefit from it. Sports bring in millions and billions of dollars. Vegas casinos bring in billions of dollars. So I'm not surprised that sports are rigged or fake or can be rigged, be scripted, and so forth. So I feel like the same thing's going to happen with the NFL this season for the Super Bowl 51, just like in the NBA. It's a similar thing. In last couple of other games that I've noticed in the NFL, last Super Bowl winners, like we never learn from the past. It's just like we just get caught up in the moment, in the hype. Same thing with the election. It's the same thing, and people react the same way. And the lesser of two evils mantra and this nonsense, and it's like unbelievable. It's like, wow, like, are you kidding me? You guys can't see it. It's like we just keep repeating history over and over again, never learning from the past. I guess that's how our brains were programmed to do that, I guess. But it's time for us to deprogram because it's not helping out at all. But I still have my eyes on the Colts here. And for the NFC East, I'm not sure. I feel like, I don't know, I start seeing Redskins possibly again for the playoffs. But I know certain people have the Eagles and possibly the Giants, and the public is being turned towards Dallas right now because they're seemingly doing great. So I feel like Dallas is going to be the money team for Vegas. So I don't know. But if I was to say for the East, I would say possibly Redskins based on the themes I'm starting to see or notice or pick up on. If not the Redskins, I would say a draw between Giants and the Eagles. But I did have Giants. One of the teams that I had prior to the season starting was the Giants for a Super Bowl. So, yeah, I don't know. So, we'll see how this all plays out. But I will say, based on my observation, I'm feeling at this moment that Colts possibly, there's a theme still there with the Giants. Vikings is a little bit iffy, but I still feel like they may recover and come back again. Yeah, so right now four teams that I'm keeping my eyes on, and as I get closer, probably in December, so forth, I'll probably know for sure. I'm just doing this because it's fun, and I take sports as entertainment. I'm not placing bets. I don't encourage anyone to do that at all. Gotta be careful. In terms of the Vikings and Colts, because I'm seeing a lot of symbolisms and cues surrounding them, that might be a little trick going on. They're a little suspect to me. Like the Colts, a little bit suspect. Because I know the Colts' first game is week 15 with the Vikings. And 15 reverses 51, which could be a foreshadowing of Super Bowl 51. And that might steer people to think, oh, Super Bowl 51, Vikings and the Colts. But I don't know, that would be way too obvious for me. That's why I don't encourage people to place bets and, so forth. That's not smart or wise to do. Don't do that. There are people who make a living off of it, are millionaires, but they have insider information because they know it's all rigged. They know it's a fraud. They know it's scripted. They know it's not real. They know about the Vegas factor. So these millionaires and people who bets professionally, as they know the deal. So they're making a living off of it. So you being the average person trying to figure out who's going to win and placing bets and seeing if you can make some money off of it, you're going to end up losing your money. So you being the average fan trying to place bets and betting all your life savings and so forth, because I've been hearing people doing that, you're crazy, you're nuts. So you have no business doing that. So anyway, I'm just, basically doing this for fun and basically just seeing, again, just testing my theory with NFL because I already proved it with the NBA to myself and, others. So that was crazy though. When the Cavs won, I was just like, yep, definitely rigged and fixed. No doubt about it. So now I'm just, experimenting with the NFL. So even if I don't figure it out, if I'm wrong, doesn't mean it's not rigged. It's still rigged because there's people out there who are able to predict it. Predict all the the games and the winners and so forth at this time. Yeah, it's basically all I have to say about that, and I am done.